really flush out the business case. Okay. That's, us as engineers, us come from this side of the fence, the engineer side, we get very excited about our own ideas, very excited about getting stuff to work. Bounce it off your business friends. Have them grind you in their very, unsympathetic and non-empathetic, business way, right? Flush out that business case, then take your working business case and see if it attracts customers.
Welcome back to another installment of the NextGen Case Study series. On today's episode, we have Garret Grajek, who is the CEO and co-founder of YouAttest, a company that provides cloud-based identity, auditing, and management solutions. With nearly 30 years of experience in information security, Garret is recognized as a security visionary, holding 13 patents in technologies such as X.509, mobile, SSO, federation, and multi-factor authentication. He has worked on significant security projects for both commercial clients and public sector organizations, including the U.S. Navy and the EPA, which is why we're excited to have him on the program. Garret, welcome to the show.
Great to be on here.
I'm excited to get into things here. Your extent of experience in the technology space is very intriguing, and we're going to dive into that. But before we do, Garret, if you could just share maybe in 2 or 3 minutes a quick little background, who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the co-founder of YouAttest.
Yeah, I started as a programmer, and that's real important because I heard a great discussion of it with someone to contrast Elon Musk with Steve Jobs. And the guy said, that's not a fair comparison. One is much more an engineer, one's more of a visionary. And my background is engineering, okay? So I'm very, very comfortable with the role of someone who is, classifies someone as technical, but looks at the world and then comes up with technical solutions around it. And that's what I did. I went from programmer then to sales engineer in the identity and security world. A company called Security Dynamics that bought RSA. It was the first big two-factor company in the world. From there, I went on to single sign-on solutions like NetEgrity, and then worked over at places like TI and IBM before starting my own two-factor authentication company that I built from scratch from my experience with at RSA and from a single sign-on company called NetEgrity. I combined those into a single solution to form the first two-factor IDP. And you're like, Garret, who cares about two-factor IDPs? No, that's exactly what Okta and Entra ID are today. So I built those before those even existed. It was really fun. From there, I went on and built 9 AI models over at a company called Silence, and then was drafted back into the identity world by people who were saying, Garret, someone should build an easy-to-use governance solution, hence the current product, YouAttest.
Wow, that's quite a colorful background. There's a lot of various experiences there that kind of led you to have the bravery to branch out on your own and create something that obviously is different, but is very necessary in a growing digital world. I wonder if you could speak to how some of those early experiences kind of shaped your approach to the work that you're doing with YouAttest.
Oh, I'm at a partner site down here in San Diego, and he said kind of the same thing as we're going through the history of, boldness or whatever. I go, I don't know. My biggest bold move was at 17 years old. I left Chicago as a kid and knew nothing but Chicago and wound up at the University of Texas. And that was the biggest mind change in my life. And you can put it any way you want, right? There's this, this bold, accent in Southside Chicago and Texas. So that made for all their transitions, believe it or not, actually pretty comfortable. And it was like, okay, if I believe in myself and I do my own research and believe in what I can do, then my ideas and myself and Garret Grajek can stand up to anything. And that's where it went. And that's when I created SecureAuth. That's the way I felt about it. I was like, hold it. The world is talking that it needs two-factor, but it's taken too long to integrate. And I was like, the world would appreciate a better product. And now we're being hacked to the bejesus, right? And when we look at this, we say, hold it. Our permissions are completely out of whack in our identity systems. Just, and I always like to say, it's easier to provision than deprovision. It's just you said, add some more rights to someone, no one gets mad. You subtract rights, people get mad. Okay, that's how I created this company called YouAttest.
So that's a very unique approach to the way that we solve problems is to take things away and look for a simpler solution. Being that you're an engineer kind of and that's your background, I wonder if you could kind of explore with me how that has served that approach to simplifying things.
It's a very pragmatic look. When I built this product, what I literally did in the identity is called identity attestation, which means that there's all these compliance measures based on, real good writings from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. And they created something called the cybersecurity framework that says these are the best practices. You don't have to follow them, but if you don't, you probably get hacked or something bad will happen. Anyways, a lot of regulations came from the NIST CSF, and that gets enforced by law. One of the key aspects they say is that users' privileges, and just speak wonky here, user privileges around what is called sensitive data. But what's sensitive data, Garrett? Sensitive data is your healthcare information, your financial information, your information that you need to log in, all that type of stuff that helps identify you. That information and the users and the access to those need to be quantified through a process called attestation. Attestation means you, one, quantify what the access is, who has the access, and then someone in the business goes and says, I'm good with this. They literally sign off and say, I'm good with that person having access. That is usually a manual process. So what I did is, given my engineering background, I've got a favorite CTO of mine on the left-hand side. And I said, okay, how's your data? What's it doing? And then I took an auditor and I said, dear auditor, talk to the CTO the way you would do. And we took notes. What was the process? It was a very manual process. Emails going back and forth, spreadsheets, confirmations, all that kind of stuff. And then what we did is digitize it into a cloud-based form and automated the process. So there were no spreadsheets, no tickets, no whatever, just a simple email or social media message where someone clicked the link, went in and attested to the roles.
Okay, so I'm getting a pretty good picture of the work that you're doing, what the outcomes are here. While there is definitely a need for security and authentication when it comes to the risk managers kind of managing, access to their stuff, there might be a resistance to that from the companies, maybe because they don't understand or maybe they just don't know what they don't know. I'm curious, Garret, if you could maybe speak to how you overcome that. What is your approach to communicating these complex ideas to people?
What matters and what gets enterprises' attention is there's no question that most CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, they want to do the right thing. They know that this is important. So it's not a matter of arguing with them. Okay. They get that. Now, what they need is a justification to prioritize resources, their own people and their and budget for a product like YouAttest. That comes from the form of one identifying on a security side. I can show them stats from the Verizon data breach incident report. It says, close to 70% of your hacks come from identities. I can show them Palo Alto reports that show 99%, that's their number, not mine, 99% of cloud entitlements are overprivileged. They can go use cases. But what really takes them over the edge to buy in and to use the product is compliance and fines and regulations. If you're in the healthcare industry, you're under HIPAA and high trust that says you must do this. You must file a report that says you reviewed all your users. If you're a publicly traded company, you're under Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley says you have to review our user. If you are if you are a bank or a credit union, you have your respective cyber guidances like FFIEC and NCUA that say you have to do this. I can keep going. If you're in the energy group, you're under something called NERC-CIP that says you have to review the accesses around them. And this isn't just America, y'all. I just did a review for a Japanese keiretsu who wants to start selling this over there. And I, stopped at 12. I found 12 Japanese cyber compliances that basically say that you have to be reviewing and attesting to your access to data. And our friends who are on the other side, on the other Atlantic, they have things like, they use a lot of ISO 27001. They have their privacy, GDPR, and now they got something that no one else in the world does, but the U.S. will be following soon. They've got something called DORA, and it's not the cartoon. It's their Resiliency Act that says everyone holding financial information must do best practices, which include attesting to who has access to these sensitive data.
So when it comes to these regulations and who they apply to, I guess then the approach to communicating with these companies or these individuals who need your services, the approach would be more educational than anything, or how do you?
Yeah, it's educational / informative of the people who are ready to buy. They know they're under regulations. What they don't know is that there's a better tool out there to help them meet the compliance quicker. So that's where basically we do a lot of webinars like this and demos and on-site, on web trials, et cetera, to get the word out.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Just given the complex nature of it all, there's a lot to cover and a lot of information to share. And so having somebody's undivided attention is probably the best way to get that done. But
Right.
I suppose that poses its own challenges and bottlenecks in terms of customer development. What is your approach to kind of managing the way that you communicate with your prospects and leads?
We start usually with an inside sales or a web lead that says we say great, and they usually do the web lead. They want to try the product, which is good. We want them to try the product. We have a unique cloud-based solution that literally the POC version that they use to POC the product, we use that as the deployment tenant for them. So they're seeing what they get to try it, they get to try it in their environment and all that. So the goal is, and that call is to, is they ping us, we set up a call, and I'm a huge believer in Calendly, so it's the greatest thing in the world. You just go to calendly.com/YouAttest2 and set up an appointment with us. You can literally do that right now, okay? And that will get the right people on the call. That will get usually someone who's going to handle the business side, a sales guy, and then someone who can handle all the technical questions, an SE or a field engineer. And that field engineer will be running through, sales guys usually getting the requirements, finding if the timeline of the opportunity, the size of the opportunity, and if he gives the green light, which he usually does 95% of the time, the SE then gives a demo. And we discuss next steps at the end. If it's, a timeline that they're looking at a purchase in the next 90 days, we will talk about either they can use a demo portal that we've created for these, that they can just get on and play with the product, or they can get a demo tenant that connects to their environment. And that's usually a follow-up call. Because most likely, one guy is kicking the tires, and that one guy is on the call. He's using the risk or the security group. He goes, oh, I like this, but I need buy-off from this group or that group. And so the second or third call is you have additional members of the staff on the call.
It seems to me like you got a very dialed in process. You're very in tune with the group of people that you're aiming to serve, and the way that you serve them is it seems to be functioning very well to kind of help that business grow. But as you were talking, I'm realizing there's kind of a need for a reliance on the team of people that you have in place to execute on certain things, whether that's the top of funnel kind of
Right.
fielding demo calls and that sort of thing, or webinars and the like. What do you do to empower your team to be able to do what they do so well?
Yeah, first of all, constant communication.
Mm,
Whatever companies use, I don't care if it's, you're using Teams or Slack or whatever, people that the different teams that should be in constant contact. And, my company has a lot of remote, like every company does. So I do this. Secondly, is set regularly scheduled sessions with the team. New product release, we got to get trained. New presentation, we should get trained. So you regularly, so you're constantly chattering, constant whatever. And then the, the greatest training I got about trading was I once did a startup company, and the company wasn't doing real well. Me and the other engineer knew the company was going to go under. That was 30 years ago or whatever. I was just a programmer. And the other guy had a wild hair and said, we should go bike Ireland. And I was like, let's go do it. So I fly to, Dublin, and I guess we're going to bike to Cork or something. I don't know. It's a wonderful country, and it was a fantastic ride. And I'm sitting there next to a guy that's a pub, of course, in Dublin. And I'm looking at the guy, and he goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm biking to Cork, I guess, this week. And he goes, well, I thought it's a good journey. And I'm like, yeah. And I go, but I'm not in shape. He goes, doesn't matter. By the time you get there, you will be. And, right? And that does exemplify a lot in the way I believe in humans. Okay? You got the right humans. And if the task isn't over their head, and that's, part of, product and project management is, you come up with tasks that you believe the team could do, but it could be beyond their current scope, but of course it is. I mean, none of the employees knew about YouAttest before they came here, right?
mm.
So, but they do it and they learn as doing. Big believer in that people get better at it. And having, engineering, sales engineer background, I understand it is a process. It's not ones and zeros when it comes to humans. It's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and that's how you get to the end line.
I love the idea of small incremental changes over time have a massive impact. You don't know what you can accomplish in such a long period of time, although you don't think you can do much. So much happens, and I love that that's part of your mantra and the way that you approach this whole thing. But it does kind of point at something else, which is you're kind of creating something where it's a little bit more difficult to measure success when you are dealing with the intangible, when you're dealing with a person who is moving forward. Like you said, it doesn't matter. By the time you get there, you will be. I'm curious about what your approach is to determining whether or not the efforts that you and your team are making are contributing to the goal that you're aiming at.
I put myself personally in a lot of calls, but I also just monitor the results, right? If you're doing all these calls and we're not doing any trials or not leading to sales, then something's going on. That's it. It is. One thing about sales, I mean, it is, for whatever, I don't care if you're selling diamonds or donuts or YouAttest, right? It's all pretty quantifiable, right?
Right.
One group's doing better than the other group. Okay, why is that? And then you can break it down that maybe they're not trained right, or maybe they're not, or maybe it's the person.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's the constant contact, the being in touch, the communication channels, having them open, that all kind of serves to the higher thing. But then there's this part where I get that it's not measurable. You have to trust your gut. You have to know that who you're talking to and what you're talking about and how you're communicating with them is landing, and that you are all focused on achieving that goal. And so when you point at that makes a lot of sense.
And every manager, executive has their own style. I do believe that it is my job to be in the public, to be sure they see someone out there messaging not themselves. I'm, big on LinkedIn, big on webinars, we started our own GRC, governance, risk and compliance podcast called Audit Tuesday, right? And therefore, not only can they watch and learn, but they understand, they hear the message, not only the message, but the tone. What is it? What is the YouAttest tone? What are we messaging and how are we messaging it? And who's it message for? And that's what I do believe that, us in the higher ranks need to be out in front. And it's a big help. And personally, I see a bigger change towards that. When I started the thing, someone has asked me, some of them about the early CEOs. And I'm like, I don't know, the ones I can think of, and I'm not going to name them, but because maybe people think it's negative, and I don't. They were behind the scenes. They simply didn't count public. They wasn't that personality. I mean, yes, they would approach they would talk to the troops and, go to the sales conventions and all that, but they really weren't spokespeople for the company. They really weren't. Not in the public sense we're so accustomed to now, right? I mean, Steve Jobs changed everything. He just became the face. He's like, hold it, this is a cool product. Look what I got, That's an Android, but that's okay, Steve. Anyways, but he did change it. He did. Whereas the old execs before, people can argue whatever, where it would change. But with Steve Jobs is that they became spokesmen. Now, with, amazing spokespeople. I don't care what you think of him, but Elon Musk, and it's just amazing. He's just the brand. He's fun. He's there, all that. And that's the kind of stuff. And I don't say that execs have to be like that, but I do think they should be comfortable being in the message. LinkedIn is kind of like my, go-to drug, posting every day, posting stuff, and then people see, oh, this is how YouAttest talk. I think there's something to that.
Yeah, people are a lot more in alignment, especially in the day and age of the dying corporation. We're all sick of the big corporate machine controlling everything, and we're obviously collectively speaking out to that. But I remember when I was growing up, Garrett, being a businessman was boring. Nobody wanted to be a businessman. And now we're in an era of celebrity CEOs and celebrity entrepreneurialism and the personal brand having an impact on the businesses themselves to the tune of billions of dollars. Like if Elon Musk says the wrong thing, Tesla stock goes down, or if he says the right thing, it goes up. And so this is a really
it really is. It's really interesting. And it's kind of, the funny thing is, there's no 20-year-old on this call in the 20s that wouldn't say that's obvious. You know what I mean? That because they built their brand since age, fourth grade, right? God knows my daughter cares about her brand, not her volleyball videos. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that, my son plays guitar and he's been building his brand on Instagram for the last 10 years. So I think it comes second nature to the 20s, and probably even the early 30s, whatever. It's not as obvious that is part of our roles. So maybe, pick some number in the 40s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That being comfortable with being the message, not just touting the message, but there's no way you could probably name 10 off the top of your head, CEOs, that they are the message.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and they're pretty damn good at it.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. That's a huge shift. If you go to my LinkedIn profile and you look up at the CEOs of my early companies, they're great companies, right? Mm-hmm. That was not the personality of the CEOs. They were much more comfortable being behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's an exciting time that we're in, Garrett. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of evolution that's happening, and it's happening very quickly, almost too quickly, because it's becoming more and more difficult to keep up with everything that's happening, all the new gizmos and gadgets and things that are coming out. And um, I wonder, as we kind of come to a close with our time together here, what is it that's coming down the pipeline? What's on the horizon for YouAttest? What's exciting? What kind of trends do you see happening? That kind of thing.
It's getting the word out better. The main thing is we are ahead of our time in simple deployment of these user access reviews, identity annotation. We're ahead of our time in using modern technologies like AI, and it's not just AI; it's predictive AI. But then coming up with items like identity trust scores that can be used to identify suspicious users. Yeah, that's kind of common, but also to aggregate the trust scores to come up with an overall trust of the group or the company, and then pass that on maybe to an MSP monitoring the company. But where I'm really excited is taking that into the supply chain. Like, should you trust this user? Okay, well, we trust him because we authenticated. Okay, anyone can grab authentication by now. We know that, right?
Mm,
Is the user itself trustable? Is
right.
that entity it's come from? Do they have good cyber practices? Is the user, what is the groups in the organization? We know that when hackers get a hold of our identities, they do nasty things. They overprivilege themselves. So did you just let in someone in the own organization or an external organization that is overprivileged that shouldn't be? How would you know? You would know by taking the YouAttest identity trust score and having some concept and confidence in that identity that you absorbed. That's where the world's going.
Man, that is exciting. I know in the advent of all of these bots and fake users and
Of course.
nonsense that's going on, having a way to figure out if you're actually dealing with a human is going to be really, really helpful in the way that we continue to do commerce globally, online, together. We're all working, I think, towards a very similar outcome. So that's very exciting. Garret, if you were to have somebody who's in a similar position to you, who's kind of doing similar work, facing similar challenges, what would be one piece of advice that you would offer them to kind of help keep them in pursuit of that goal?
Really flush out the business case. Okay. That's, us as engineers, us come from this side of the fence, the engineer side, we get very excited about our own ideas, very excited about getting stuff to work. Bounce it off your business friends. Have them grind you in their very, unsympathetic and non-empathetic, business way, right? Flush out that business case, then take your working business case and see if it attracts customers. That I would say is the number one thing. And if you're not comfortable doing that, and there's no reason everyone should be, make sure you partner with someone who is comfortable with that.
Find somebody you can collaborate with. Very sound
Yes.
advice.
Yes.
Garret,
There you go.
if somebody wanted to reach out to you to perhaps work with you or pick your brain further, what's the best way to do that?
So you can look me up at YouAttest, YOUATTEST. Or you can write me at CEO@youattest.com. Or if you get lost in that, just look up Garret Grajek. There's only one of them. And that's who I was told that 20 years ago when I got tired of spelling the name. They go, no, it's a great name for the internet. There's not many of those. So you look up Grajek, Garret Grajek, and I'll say hello to you.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate how generous you've been with your time and your wisdom and insight for the viewers. It's been very helpful. I've learned a lot in this conversation, so thank you for that. And on that note, if you wanted to reach out to me and my team for any reason, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.